So now we're going to look at what happens when there is a third skew borehole drawn in one of these questions for normally for a part 2 or a part B. And what we have with it basically is that we have our first two skew boreholes, which are used to find the head wall and the footwall, and then a third one can be drawn to ask us to find other bits of information. So in this case, you'll see here for the part 2, so this is the example on page 364, it says that a second skew borehole from A is drilled, but this is actually a third skew borehole. So it's the second one coming from that point, but it's actually a third borehole, okay? So what we'll do is we find our information here. So we have second skew borehole from A is drilled in a southerly direction. So what we have is it's going to be from A. It's going to be in a southerly direction and it has an actual inclination of 60 degrees to the horizontal plane. So 60 degrees to the horizontal plane. What it wants us to do then is to determine the altitude at which this borehole touches the bottom surface of the stratum and also the inclination of the borehole to the stratum. Now, first things first, when we're looking at this, we have to figure out what views we need to actually look at here. Okay. Now, first of all, if you're looking at a southerly direction, okay, so this bit, that has to be looked at in a plan, okay, because of southerly direction. And then what it says is that the inclination has an actual inclination of 60 degrees to the horizontal plane, which means that that needs to be done in an elevation because we can't work to the horizontal plane in anything other than an elevation. Okay, so what we're doing is we're saying, right, well, we need to figure this bit out in the plan, and then we're going to have to find either the elevation that we have normally or maybe a second elevation, it might be an auxiliary, to figure out where the 60 degrees is going to go. Okay, so going on from there, what we have is the example of this is going on. So the first part of this question is the same as what we looked at before. So looking for a dip and looking for a thickness. And the second part then is here where we're looking for the that vertical borehole. And what we're looking for again, so it has it here again. So we have it's drilled from A in a southerly direction. Okay, and then we had that it was going to be at 60 degrees to the horizontal plane, okay, which this is missing here. So 60 degrees to the horizontal. So what you'll see here is that if I look at this, for a couple of things here, we have, first of all, southerly direction. Okay, you'll see it's from A here, which was given to us in a southerly direction. So we're going to have a borehole coming down like this. Okay, now the thing about that is then we don't actually know how long this is yet. Now there's a couple of ways of doing that. We can either bring it up into the elevation and find it that way, or we can bring it into an auxiliary. Now I would say for these ones, our easiest thing to do here is to bring it into an auxiliary, okay, to have just a completely separate view. Now the reason for that is because you already have a lot of construction up here in the elevation, okay, and really we don't want to be kind of adding on to that. So I'm gonna say we're going to draw it as an auxiliary, okay. So what I have is that if I want to see this as its true length, okay, and again at the 60 degrees that we're looking for, I'm going to project it up so that it is coming in this direction. Okay, so it's going to come like that. So we're going to go in that direction up into the view over here, and what you'll see is we have this view up here. Now within that, what we have is you'll see there is my there's my borehole, okay, and then obviously we have the XY line there, or the X1 Y1 line coming with that. So we have the X1 Y line here going through there. Okay, so we have our borehole and we have the X1 Y1 line. Okay, let's just get that one a bit closer to where it should be. So there we go. Now what you have is for the heights for that is basically you have your A, you already knew where A was at. Okay, so we had a height for A already, which was at 70, that's given in the question, so it's at 70 up here. And then it's at 60 degrees, and that's my borehole in there. Now, the second part of the question then is that or the second part of this part of the question is that it wants us to find where it hits the bottom surface of the stratum. Okay, now what that means is that we need to find the stratum here, okay, in this view. Okay, now the problem that we have with that in finding it at the start is that we don't actually have, so our two lines here that we have for our stratum, we don't actually have them crossing this line. Okay, so we need to do something a little bit different to be able to find where they go. Okay, now what this involves is to remember, okay, that the stratum is bigger than these two lines. Okay, so if I go back here and if we have a look at where these are coming from, we have our skew boreholes here. So we have, skew boreholes coming down here, and we have our head wall and we have our footwall. Those two lines are just lines on the stratum. Okay, the stratum goes out for a triangle in this case, out further, but it could go on for much longer if we were to think about it like a plane. So if we thought about it like a laminar plane, it would go out even further. So what that just means is that we can extend out from this line here. We can use this line as our reference, but the stratum is actually much bigger. Okay, so what I have then is that if I go back to this again and I think about the stratum being bigger, I can bring it out so that it does hit this line. So I could say that it does hit this borehole when it's extended out in these directions. So if I extended them out to think that the laminar plane or the stratum was actually there, so if I went out and out with that one and I went out and out with that one, it would hit it eventually, okay, as it went through it. So what that looks like then in practice is that we go up to this view. Okay, now the reason that we use this view is because this is the view where we actually see our stratum. We're looking directly in at it. Okay, so what it allows us to do is that it allows us to take heights in this, okay, to be able to then bring it back over to this view. So if we look at it, this is a plan, this is an elevation, this is a plan, this is an elevation. So I can take distances from this view and put it into this view. Okay, the reason that I wouldn't take it in this view is because we don't really have the stratum in that view. Okay, we have the head wall and the footwall, but we don't have the full head wall and footwall stratum here and the bit that's in between, so with our thickness. So to do that then, what we have is, you'll see here, first of all, is I've projected a line here, or they projected a line here from C here through until it hit the top and the bottom of the stratum. Okay, now what this is basically doing is basically taking a section of it through that. Okay, if you want to think about it like that, but you can think about this very much as just a construction that we do. Okay, when it comes to doing it, what we get there is we get a Q and a P that they call it here. So they have they have Q and a P here. So it's this point and this point. So where it hits the head wall and where it hits the footwall. Okay, what we can do with that then is take that and project it back from this view into my auxiliary over here, and then I can take the height for P and Q. So from here, so the height would be from here to here and from here to here. Okay, and I can transfer those heights here into this view, so Q and P. Okay, so I'm just taking those heights from here, bringing them up over to here. Okay, that's P and Q. Then I can take, but you could take it anywhere along this line. And what they've done, whoops, let's get that as a line. So what they've done is they've gone from A here. So A up through it, and they found 2 points for this one. Okay, so what you have here is you have now a point for T and you have a point for S. Okay, and what we have there from that is then from A here comes up into the auxiliary up here, and that gives us the point T and the point S. Okay, then to actually put the stratum into that view, then it's just a matter of joining up those points. So what we have is we have the bottom surface here, which is going, or sorry, the top surface here for the head wall is going through S and P, and then we have the bottom surface then is going through the other 2 points. Okay, now what you have with that then is that gives you the information we need. So let's get rid of some of this. Okay, so what we have is we have our views here, And what it's asking for in the question is the altitude at which the borehole touches the footwall here. So altitude is always just straight up, so perpendicular to the horizontal plane, so that would be this one. So then what you would have is to actually put in for your labeling here to have your altitude. It would be measuring from your x1, y1 line here to your bottom surface of your stratum there. So it'll be from over here to this one, so that's where it meets, that point there. And that then you will put in your altitude. Now you could just say it as the altitude here, but you'd also just put in the distance. Okay, so whatever that distance ended up being. And this would always be the way that you would do one of these if you have another borehole and you're asked to find where it crosses. Okay, something to do with this. Now where this might change is that in this case the borehole here was southerly, okay, which meant that it was going straight down and went across. But if in another instance you were told that the third borehole was at a different angle, so let's say it was southwest, then you'd have a line coming down here. And instead of looking in the direction we looked at over in this way, you would instead look up 90 degrees to that, okay? And after that, everything else would stay the same, except this time, instead of these points here projecting between them, what you would do is, let's go and have a look at this orange again, is that if I wanted to find the points coming from this one back into this one, I would just pick a point here on it and it will come from here, projected down through, okay, the thing. That would give me my point there. And then I use my distance for that. So it doesn't really matter what angle this is at. All that changes is the angle that your auxiliary will go at. So in this case, we'll go up here. But the actual construction of projecting back down into this view would remain the same when you go to do it. And all of that comes from the idea that the skew boreholes, or sorry, the head wall and the footwall lines here that we have, so skew lines for those, are just a part of the stratum. It's not the entire stratum. So we can extend them out like we've done with this here to this view to be able to find those points where it would meet in this particular place.